oh, hey, Joe, how you doing? How's your wife, Susie? And the guy would be like, how do you remember me? And so that's kind of what's held up is like, this is what a networker is. A networker can remember every name and every detail.
Welcome to Monday Mornings with Michelle, the new business podcast. Whether you're kicking off your day or kickstarting your business, Michelle is going to kick your ass into next week with the essential fours: strategy, systems, support, and state of mind. Now, welcome to center stage, Michelle Nedelec.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I am here with my most amazing guest, Michael. Michael, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. And so am I. Give everybody kind of the 5,000-foot view of who you are and what you love to do.
Well, from 5,000 feet away, I'm very, very small.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Whitehouse. I'm the guy who knows a guy. I connect people. And for the longest time, I tried to be other things like a coach or a magazine publisher or various other things. And I just kept networking. And I found that I was spending 20 to 30 hours a week networking. So whatever else I tried to do didn't get done because I'd just be out meeting people. And I finally said, this better be my business or else I'm going to be the best connected homeless guy in town. And that's how I came across being a networking concierge. So now my clients hire me to make connections for them. Some people call me a professional frog kisser because I kiss all the frogs and introduce them to the ones who turn into princes.
Nice. So do you also do it for relationships or mostly for business?
I think my wife would be upset if I kissed all the people and then introduce them. I don't do relationships. My relationship matchmaking record is not as good as my business matchmaking record, unfortunately. I'm focusing primarily in the joint venture space because I'm finding that there's a kind of shared language and structure that makes my job easier. But I could conceivably, work with people in other spaces as well. But it's mostly a matter of I'm already meeting with dozens of people every month, and I know there's hundreds of people I've already met, and thus I'm able to shave a lot of time off the networking process for busy people. I don't necessarily want to work with people who don't understand how networking works, because I don't want someone who thinks I'm a magical wizard who will just solve their problems. I want someone who knows how to network, likes networking, and doesn't have time for it. That's a great person for me, because then they get it. Like, they get what it's about, and then they see that I'm saving them time.
Nice. Love that. So for those who don't know, describe to us, or if you have a particular definition of it, what in your perspective is joint ventures or affiliate marketing?
So joint ventures, so there's kind of like the common English definition and then the industry definition. Because the common definition is basically any venture that is two people joining together. Arguably, me being on your podcast is a form of joint venture. I'm reaching your audience while helping you provide content. Generally, in the joint venture space, TM, I don't know who trademarked it, but capital J, capital V joint venture, it tends to be, there's specific types of joint ventures which involve exchange of audience and value in different ways. And the more into the space you get, the more systemized it gets, partly so you can do a lot of them. So like webinar swaps, for example, is a form of joint venture. I'm putting on a webinar and I want to find people who will promote my webinar in exchange for me promoting their webinar. And if you have a common language, then you can say, let me find 50 people who will do webinar swaps. We all know what the words mean. We all know how to do it. We're just plugging our systems in together. But joint ventures, there's as many joint ventures as there are people doing joint ventures. And there's always new ways to do it, new innovations. But ultimately, it's a matter of combining my resources and your resources to make things better for both of us and to make 1 + 1 = 11.
Nice. Love that. So what is your favorite kind of joint venture? Who do you love putting together?
I'm not sure I have a niche of favorite type yet. I'm in the first few months of really learning that space because I know people. I know putting people together. Yep. And I connected with people in the joint venture space. Is like, you should do that over here. And I said, well, I don't know all the details of joint ventures. They said, you don't have to. You need to know that your audience matches your audience and you should talk to each other and they'll know what to say. So really, I don't often get into the details of what is the joint venture. And oftentimes I'm not even involved in what kind it is. It's, both of you work with Generation X corporate women. You should work together because you have the same audience, even if it's different offers. So that could be a webinar swap. It could be, it could be something as simple as getting on each other's podcasts or guest a guest blog or something, or it could be something more in depth, like putting a summit together or giveaway or teaming up to do something. There's all kinds of ways to do it. And I don't necessarily get into, you should get together and do a webinar swap. Now with my clients, they will say, here's my goals. I want to do this many webinar swaps and get on this many summit stages and talk to this kind of people. And here's my audience. And then I really, really work into it, finding that specific thing. But more often, even with my clients, it's, I want to do these things. Here's my audience. And then I find people have that audience and say, hey, I've got a client. They want to do webinar swaps, get on summit stages and guest blogs and podcast appearances. You should talk. And they'd be like, oh, I've got 3 out of 4 of those. Let's get together. So nice. I'm fairly agnostic as to how those opportunities come together. Because I'm not so much like an agent who makes things happen. Mm-hmm. I'm more like the gadfly at the party who's like, oh, Michelle, have you met Bob? You guys should totally talk. And then you talk. I'm not gonna be like, so now that you're talking, what you should talk about is, you can figure out what to talk about. I just made sure that you met before you left the party. Nice.
So you just really like people is what it really comes down to. Is that it?
I do really like people. Well, you can probably tell I'm kind of shy and reserved. And
right.
I'm not big on talking much. Yeah. If there was a 1 to 10 extrovert scale, I'd be like an 11.5. So
nice.
So I'm trying to put myself in places where I can sort of be that guy at the party making those connections. And one thing about joint ventures is we often focus on the shared audience, that kind of thing. I've got 10,000 on my email list and you've got 10,000 on your email list, and let's share it to each other. But the other kind of joint venture is matching strengths to weaknesses. So my strength, meeting people, making connections, talking to people. I could do, if I had enough back-end support, I could just do straight 1-to-1s 8 hours a day. Like I would have no problem doing that. I'd feel by the end of the day, I'd be like, all right, who's next? Well, that was all 16 of them using 16 straight 1-to-1s. Really? Like at Potapalooza, where I did 8 straight interviews. And I was like, all right, who's next? No, the event's over. What do you mean the event's over? I've only done 8 interviews. Give me more.
Right. That went really fast to me. It was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I totally could.
Yeah. But on the flip side, my weakness is systems, structures, planning, strategies, report writing, that kind of stuff. So one of the clients I'm partnering up with is the joint venture Insider Circle, and they've got all the systems and processes and the people in their program are all being trained in it. And so they've got ways to keep track of it and to, the specific questions to ask each person so they can be categorized and put together efficiently and make the most. I couldn't come up with that on my own. So I'm partnering with people who are better than me there, because they've got all the systems, but they don't have someone who can spend 25 hours a week talking to people. Because
Mon is really good at putting together systems. Yeah. That guy is smart, man. You give him almost anything. It's like, hey, can you systemize this? And then done.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a great fit, because he met me and he's like, if you took my systems and you're running around talking to people, we can make things happen. You gotta talk. Yeah. And he was the one who said, like, don't worry about not knowing the details. You can learn that stuff. Anyone can learn that stuff. It's having the instinct to connect people. You can't learn that. You've either got it or you don't. And that's what I got. Nice. And of course, being naturally really good looking. That's the other thing.
Of course. Yeah. And Mon's also really good at seeing opportunity when it knocks. Mm-hmm. It's like it doesn't have to knock twice. He's like, I get it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when you're working with people, well, let's kind of back up the bus a bit. So other than being really good at connecting people, how did you decide that, hey, I should really do this for other people? How did it become that?
So the credit for this original idea I'd give to Phil Palucha, who's the host of Billionaires and Boxers, and a brilliant coach in his own right. And I was talking to him about how, like, I got all this networking knowledge, and I know that the key to the entrepreneurial model is you have to have some sort of high ticket program. You have to have something that people can give you enough money for, that a modest number of them can support you. The math is pretty simple. But I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm like, I don't have like a thing I could teach that people pay a big pile of money for. I don't have a system. I don't have a process. really, and I'm not good at taking what I do and processizing it in system, but I don't even know what that word is. Processize, is that a word?
It was a good one. I like that.
Okay, I can prophesize it.
There you go.
But yeah, so like making it packaging it into a thing. Then like, here's the program. So for just $99.97, I'll do this. I couldn't figure out what to do. And Phil said, well, what if instead of teaching people to do it, you made introductions for people? Because if you connect two people and they make $1 million, asking them for 5% of that, they'll probably, be like, oh yeah, thanks. Here's 50 grand. And I'd be like, woohoo, I don't need to work for this a year. And meanwhile, they've got the other $950,000 and everyone's happy. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And part of why this didn't click on its own for me, is that for most of my years of networking, I was in a fairly small pond. I live in New London County, Connecticut, which you probably haven't heard of. Unless you live here. I mean, I didn't hear of it. I had lived here for a day before I knew what it was. So there's not a lot of like people making multi-million-dollar deals in New London County, Connecticut. So I was connecting people to contractors who could help with their house, or, maybe occasionally a $10,000 deal would come together because I introduced them. So it didn't occur to me that like I could make these kinds of connections. And then, as you said, I'm thinking about who I know, and I'm like, oh yeah. Because in 2004, I moved to Groton knowing nobody and built a network of local people. And then in 2020, I was unmoored from time and space. Probably most people knew the sense of being disconnected from time and space in 2020. But I took it to mean I can go anywhere and do anything.
Nice.
So when 2020 hit, the first thing I realized was, if my BNI group is on Zoom, everyone else's BNI group is on Zoom, and I can visit BNIs anywhere in the world.
Right.
Malaysia, Australia, England, Canada, I think maybe some other countries I'm forgetting, all over the US. And so I started making connections everywhere. And I was no longer limited to who's in my county, who can I drive to meet. It was, who can I get on a Zoom call with, which is anyone. And then I, meet this higher level of people, a business owner, which created that possibility, which Phil saw, and is like, well, what if you start introducing people and either they pay you a retainer or you get a percentage? You didn't have a specific, way to execute. But once I was onto that track, I started sharing that with people. And one of them said, well, I'd hire you to connect me with joint ventures and speakers. And I know a bunch of other people would too. Let me introduce you to them. And that's how I got connected to them on. And that's how, everything's growing out from there.
I love that. So give us an example of one of your Cinderella stories.
Of making those kinds
clients,
of connections.
Yeah.
So I'm early enough that I do not have one of those like, I connected these two people and $1 million happened. It's theoretically likely to happen. But the other thing is, a lot of the connections I've made, I actually haven't known what's come of them.
Okay.
I'll occasionally get an email 3 months later saying, oh yeah, thanks for introducing me to this person. And, it was great, which was awesome when I wasn't doing it professionally. And I'd be like, I bet they just made a lot of money. I wonder how much. This person made $100,000. This person made $100,000. And this guy right here got a very nice thank you email.
Yeah. If there's one thing I've learned in the whole world of professional schmoozing, as I like to call it, it's to get the contracts in place first.
Yes. Yep.
Especially when they become big caliber ones. Like I used to know a guy that used to set other people up with used oil rigs, which is a very niche market, I would think.
Very niche. Yeah.
Yeah. But his was, when I meet people, they sign the contract. If they buy one and it's through somebody I know that I've set them up with, and we can prove that, then I get commission, period, end of story. It's not like, hey, that was really nice of you. Thanks for coming out.
So one thing I like about the space I'm operating in, of joint ventures business, we're in this very abundant space, which is a very rarefied space. Like if you're working with selling houses and oil rigs, well, it's very finite, right? There's only so many oil rigs someone's going to buy. Whereas if you're doing webinar promotions, you might do 48 a year.
Right.
So, which means that there's a nearly infinite potential for connections and an ongoing need for more connections. I mean, okay, I guess if you get 50 or 80 good connections, you can just cycle them, but it takes a lot to really get there, and you want to constantly make good connections. So So I find I don't so much need a contract as an understanding of, if I make a connection for you, you make a bunch of money, some of that should come back here. And I'm not going to sit there with well, it was 5% and it should be, but something, your thank you note should have like little numbers at the bottom of it and a signature in the lower right corner.
And little bank bar numbers.
Yeah. And like the name of the bank in the other corner. So that's what the thank you note should be. And whatever it is, like I'm not necessarily going to say what it should be, but whatever is fair. And if I make a connection for someone and they make a bunch of money and they don't reciprocate in some fashion, then I just don't make another connection for them. I'm not necessarily going to hold it against them. I'm not going to be like, here's a bad guy. Now, if we had an actual deal, an agreement, and they broke an explicit deal, that's a whole different thing. But I'd rather not burn those bridges and have that hostility. I'll just, as I say, if I help someone make a deal and I don't get properly compensated, then we're going to part as friends. But we're still going to part.
Not going to party. We're just going to part.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
When I just say that, because someday something may happen 6 months, 12 months, 12 years later, where we end up near a deal again. I don't need to trust them to pay me, or if I do, we make it a little more explicit. But I don't want to burn that bridge.
Right.
I don't want to be doing a lot of work for someone for free either, because that's if I make an introduction for someone and it works out for them, I don't begrudge it. It's just I would like to pay my bills too.
I can see that happens. Awesome. So what are some of the stumbling blocks that somebody might be having right now, and they're thinking, oh my God, Michael, I need you so badly?
Not having enough time. So the ideal person for me to talk to would say, I get what networking is. I know how it works. I know the value of it. I know the basic principles of how to do it. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. But they don't have time for it, or they don't like it. They're like, yeah, I know how to do it. I know how to go to these events, but introverts would be a key person to talk to me, because the scientific definition of an introvert is someone who is drained by social interaction, versus an extrovert is charged by social interaction. So there's some introverts like, oh yeah, I love networking. I'm great at it, but I go to one of those 2-hour events. I need to sleep for 14 hours. I need to go in an isolation tank. Someone like that is someone great to partner with me, because I can go to the event and meet 100 people. And then I can say, okay, here's the 3 you need to talk to in a one-on-one phone call. So they don't have to go to the conference or the big event, or they'd only go to certain events. They don't have to go to just any event. And I can curate, again, kissing the frogs and narrow it down. So someone who understands the value of networking, but for one reason or another can't or won't or doesn't want to put in all the time it takes.
And having the analytical brain that I have, I think you must have one hell of a spreadsheet with all of these people, what they won and who they met, and all of the ones that you've ever met. And it's like, okay, 6 years ago, I met Dave, and Dave would be perfect for you. It's like, how do you do that?
You might think that.
I do think that.
And I don't.
Okay.
So there's a couple of modern technologies that are handy cheats for me. My email remembers every email I ever send or receive. LinkedIn, Facebook, I usually end up sticking to them in one of those formats. Nice. But as I mentioned, my strength is meeting people. My weakness is systems. So particularly to anyone who's listening out there who's like, oh, I want to be a connector, but I don't have the memory for it. I don't have the system for it. I don't know. Because you hear about, I can't remember the guy's name. There was a FDR had a campaign manager who remembered like 500,000 people's names. He was superhuman, and he could not only remember their name, but like the name of their kids and their dog and where they worked. And they'd come back through 9 months later, and he'd be like, "Oh, hey Joe, how you doing? How's your wife Susie?" And the guy'd be like, "How do you remember me?" And so that's kind of what's held up is like, this is what a networker is. A networker can remember every name and every detail, and perhaps they can.
And then there's me, my best friend of 30 years. And I look at her and go, and this is somebody that I've known for a really long time, and her name escapes me.
Yeah. But so I don't have that. I don't have a system. I don't have a process. I'm developing, as I'm meeting more people and systematizing it. And I have clients who are like, I want, I'm building systems to make sure everyone I meet who's in their criteria I'm connecting with. But I don't necessarily have all those systems. So for anyone, and I'm specifically mentioning this, for anyone out there who's like, I wish I could connect, but you can. You don't need all the systems. You don't need to connect. You don't need to make every connection possible. You just need to have the intention to do it. And I've sort of trained myself. So I'm sure you haven't noticed, but I have ADHD. I hide it very well, as I'm sure you know. But
it's totally under the carpet.
Yeah, part of that is what I call popcorn memory. That in the course of a conversation or trying to write a report or trying to do something very detailed and focused, my brain will be like, oh, what about this? Oh, how about this? Do you remember this? What about this? And I've trained that instinct to pop up people that the person I'm talking to should know. And they will just if I specifically say, okay, who do I know who does this thing? Not happening. But if I just let the conversation flow, then some names will pop into my head. And those are the connections I'll make. And this is more for, the casual one-to-one, where I'm just having a virtual coffee with someone and I want to provide some value, but like, boop, name. And then
so really bringing you for coffee is the key to start this relationship, I'm hearing.
Yeah. I do get on, if I get into a conversation with someone, then I will usually make a few introductions. But it just, they kind of pop up because I've gotten into that habit. And the other thing is that when you meet a lot of people, some of those people need to meet other people you meet. Right. So it's as simple as if you can remember everyone you've met in the last 3 days, you can provide valuable connections. Now, again, I'm working on getting to a higher, more systematic and developed professional level, at which point I'll be able to say, well, I have a database of 732 people and I can type in this. And if you work with this kind of audience, then this computer will tell me who's in there, which will probably be a combination of virtual assistants and databases. But
talk to me. I know a little something about databases. You'll be okay.
But I also find that sometimes, a lot of people I meet, they don't want to meet a tenth of the people I could introduce them to because they don't have time to respond to all the introductions, let alone execute on that. I've talked to some prospective clients who are like, I don't need 10 introductions a month. I need like 3. Give me 3. Don't give me 10. 10's too many. Right. Some have a team and a system and a process, but others are like, yeah, I can do like 3 a month and then hold the next 3 till next month because that's more than I need. So
would you consider this kind of closer to sales and creating those relationships, or finding centers of influence and then they have to nurture that relationship with that center of influence?
So I try to stay away from the sales sort of thing. Again, this is one of the things I love about the joint venture space and the way things work here, is that it gets away from that sales vibe. So I've sold all kinds of things. I've sold cars, insurance, printing, local magazine ads. I've sold my own coaching services. And no matter how friendly your rapport is, at a certain point, I am the salesman and you are the prospect, and we're going to go at it. And I'm hopefully going to get your money. And it works. And with enough, technique and mindset and whatnot, you can make it not too adversarial. But I don't like it. And now that I'm a full-time entrepreneur and not working for someone else, I am more and more trying to build my life to not do things I don't like.
Fair enough. And peeps, if you're out there and you think sales is adversarial, we need to have a little chat.
Yeah.
We'll work on that one later.
Yeah. Well, and I certainly do know how to, when I was selling, there's a strategy I use where my closing line was, do you want help with that? And they'd say, yes. How do I do it? And I'd tell them what it costs and they'd sign up. But in terms of like what I do now, as opposed to selling, I want to make win-win introductions. I don't want to say, hey, Michelle, you should go buy from Bob. Because that does a bunch of things. 1, now we're in a selling situation because I'm selling for someone. 2, I'm endorsing them. So if I say you should meet Bob, I think you might have some things to talk about and possibly you could do some joint ventures. I'm not endorsing him. I'm saying you should meet and you're going to figure out if it's a good fit or not. Whereas if I say you should buy from him and you buy from him and the product's not good or doesn't deliver, or, it's a coaching program and you don't do the work, but it doesn't pan out, that's still coming back on me. Yeah. And with as many people as I meet, I don't necessarily want to be someone's salesman. I
Mhm.
want to be, I want to be the connector, because that keeps me freer to make more better connections.
Nice.
So I'm,
And of course, everybody's got to do their due diligence on that
Right.
end of things. When you're connecting to people, do they usually have a system set up whereby they have like a 2-tiered affiliate system so that they know how much they're paying you for those connections? Is it a little more random than that, or?
so the clients I have currently, it's a flat rate retainer, and then for some of their programs, there are affiliates. If I send someone to them and they end up buying a system,
Mhm.
buying something, then I get a percentage of that. Some don't. Some it's just that retainer. I do also have affiliate relationships, people who aren't necessarily clients, but they have products that the people I run across may benefit from. So I do that stream as well. I haven't actually done too much with 2-tiered affiliates yet. It's one of those spaces that always seemed fascinating. Like, oh, I'll find you affiliates and they'll sell for you and it'll be great. And I found there's a lot of nuances and details to make that work, because a lot of people need to do a lot of things, and it requires a lot of systems in place, because you're effectively turning someone into a part-time salesperson, which for the right fit, every once in a while I'll come across one and be like, oh, this is a totally natural fit. You guys should make loads together. But for many of those connections, it's kind of, the conversation has to go that way with the people they meet. And there's a lot of different factors. I've also found, because of course I've done a number of things where I promote people to my audience, my email list, whether it's summits or master classes, webinars, whatever. And my email list at this point is modest. I'm running a summit and a few other things, which should make my email list less modest in the near future. But right now it's fairly modest. And I support some of these things, but the metrics wouldn't be right. I wouldn't get a lot of opt-ins. I wouldn't get a lot. And I always just think like, well, it's because my list isn't that big and maybe it wasn't that targeted and focused. And then I started working with better partners. And I'd promote to the same list in the same way with better copy that goes to a better landing page. And I discovered, wow, my list is fine. The landing page was crap. So it's
a bad fit, or so many possibilities.
or it was too focused, or it was whatever. Yep. But there's one partnership I did. They did a to try to think of how I can scrub all the details. You can't tell what I'm talking about, but they had an event that was sort of a networking event, but also sort of selling something. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was a great networking event, because when I first went to it, it allowed me to connect with like an exciting new circle of people. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, as a networker, I went back to my community like, this was amazing. You guys got to come to the next one, because it's an amazing networking event and so many connections. And the landing page they made didn't mention networking at all. It talked about like a system and a process. And I'm like, I've been priming my audience for 6 months to come back to this event. And now you put this out. And of course, it converted it converted very poorly, because they got there like, am I on the right page?
Right.
But yeah, so there's a lot of communication, the branding has to be clear, so that the partner knows what they're promoting to and what it's about.
Little communication goes a long way. And you are a master communicator. I love and appreciate that. And I know that our listeners are going to want more from you. So how did they begin their journey with you?
Well, so the first step would be to go to guywhoknowsaguy.com. And on that page, at the very top, there's a place where they can put in their email, and they will get my Power 5 networking tips. So I took everything out of my 100-page Guy Who Knows a Guy book, distilled it down to one PDF page with 5 key tips that will, if you take those 5 tips, you too can be a connector. And then the book's just full of details and funny, really the book's full of jokes and funny stories. So if you want those, you definitely get the book. If you just want to know how to be a connector, it's in those Power 5 tips.
And if they don't want to be a connector and they just want you to connect them?
If they don't want to be a connector, just want me to connect, then they should go to the same website and look a little bit to the right. And there's a picture of a calendar. And you click on that and you pick a time. And then I will tell them all about my networking concierge program and and various services I offer.
Nice. That sounds awesome. So peeps, go to guywhoknowsaguy.com. There it is. If you're in the visual world, you got all fingers pointing at that one. And if you're driving and can't remember that for whatever reason, go to the usual awarenessstrategies.com/blog and look for Michael or networking or a guy who knows a guy or concierge. You'll find him, and make sure that you connect on his scheduling calendar, get on his calendar and go see what he might be able to do for you. See if you're fit. And I'm sure if you're not a perfect fit, he knows somebody that'll be a perfect fit for you. So you're in good hands.
Someone. Yeah.
Awesome. So I have to ask you, at what point in life did you know that you were a special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
So when I graduated college, I launched a game store.
Fun.
Straight out of school. Yeah, I joked that I couldn't find a job, so I made one. Phil Pluch on his show once said that entrepreneur is just a French word for a person who can't get a job or can't keep a job. And yeah, I didn't have the patience to go through the job search process. So I launched a business that I was completely not ready to run, did not have the skills, did not have the knowledge, and predictably drove into the ground. But other than not making money, it was wildly successful.
Super fun.
We built a community space. We built this like whole community that was very meaningful and important to people, which then meant that when it wasn't making money, I was stuck because I couldn't just be like, sorry, guys, not making any money. Find another community.
Hasta luego.
Yeah, we ended up turning it into a nonprofit that ran for another 10 years.
Really?
So I joke, but it was actually successful, except for not making any money.
As a nonprofit, that's perfect.
Yeah, lasted till I opened in 2002. It ran until 2018.
Wow, fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool. I have to ask because, the way that people get into the entrepreneurial world is, every way possible under the sun. I love to hear the stories because I think somebody else is in that boat and they're going, oh, well, hey, I'm right on track. So if you're running your business into the ground right now, you are right on track.
Yeah. And for a lot of people out there, like I think a lot of people get like, this is the way it should be done. And if they are unlucky, they've ended up in like a job or a career, they're miserable. Hopefully they haven't gone to advanced education to get there, like the person who becomes a lawyer or a doctor because their parents say they should. But they're doing what they think should be done. They're like, but I feel like there's something else. In 2022, there's something else. There's a dozen something else's. And one thing, and I'll to share a bit of my recent story. In 2021, I knew almost enough of what I wanted to do, except for how to actually monetize it. Mm-hmm. So I was paying my bills by driving Uber on weekends, and then meeting everyone I could, talking to every expert, every entrepreneur that's on my podcast. I was bringing them on there, be like, come on my podcast and teach me how to build a business, and basically educating myself through networking while I supported myself with gig work. So with the modern economy, you don't have to work a 9 to 5 and then work till midnight building your business. There's 100 ways to make a living while you build that up. So it doesn't have to be the risk. 30 years ago is a risk. You quit your job, you've got 9 months until you're on the street. You better make this work. Now you quit your job, you drive DoorDash or Uber or do Instacart or any of 100 other things. And if it takes you 5 years, you're an Uber driver for 5 years until you figure it out. So it's certainly less risk than staying in a miserable job for 5 years.
Right. Well, and that reminds me, we had a Uber driver in Vegas once, and his first question was, so what do you guys do for a living? And we told him. He's great. And I said, well, that's a fantastic question. I've never had an Uber driver ask that as first question. He goes, I love knowing what people do. I have had more professional advice for free. You are brilliant. That's awesome. He was super fun. And yeah, clearly he was making right his financial advice alone. He's like, I am never quitting this job. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so it's a front. I've caught on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've known people, like I know a realtor who got a job in a coffee shop because the connection she could make as a barista made her thousands of dollars in real estate business.
I love that. Oh, we're gonna have to talk more about the front to maintain the back. That's awesome.
Yep.
So it has been super fun, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is, and I appreciate it. Any last words for our peeps?
I would say for those who do want to be connectors, if you don't, just hire me. For those who do want to be connectors, I've been actually giving a number of talks lately on the theme of you can become a connector as soon as you decide to. And it is entirely mindset. Once you decide I'm going to connect people, the details you'll figure out. But if you say I'm a connector and just start asking the question, who can I introduce you to who would be valuable? People will start answering. And then you'll know who you need to go find. Start doing that. You'll build a network. And before you know it, you will also be a guy or gal who knows a guy.
I love that. Thank you again, Michael, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app so that we can continue to help you to scale your business. We love having you here. Thank you for listening to our show. I'm all about being a resource center for entrepreneurs to give them the information and the support that they need to make it in business. As such, the notes for this show can be found at our website at awarenessstrategies.com/blog. Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating. I like 5 stars personally, and share with your friends.